should I say, in this video, we're going to talk about the graph editor. Now, don't get too worried when you see the graph editor. Don't feel intimidated by it. What I'll do, so this is, like we said, we're keeping it simple: viewport, timeline, and graph editor. That's all we need to know when we're animating it. So here's a graph editor. So when the graph editor first comes out, you see all these buttons here. And you see this is the timeline. So it's the same as the timeline here. It moves exactly the same way. And you have all these buttons here. Now, most of the buttons you'll be using here are this one. If I hover over it, normally it comes up, but it's not coming up there. So this is when your curves, this is a spline interpolation. So it's all nice and smooth. This is a plateau. It's similar. It's like it goes flat and spline. This is a linear interpolation, flat interpolation, and constant. So this is more used for pose to pose. I don't really use this one. I just use these. And these are for breaking tangents. And I'll go over that in more detail. These are for cycling, post-in cycling, and infinite cycling your character. So in video games, that's used quite a lot because you have to cycle a lot of idles, runs, and walks. And that will be covered in a later module on how to do in-game animation, which I will be doing. But that's the overall buttons you'll use are these. Now, a lot of these are used for shortcuts on the keyboard because it makes the workflow much efficient. And I'll show you how to do that, how to set that. So all of these that you have here, you also have up here. Yeah, curve. All these options that you have here. So these are cycle, post-infinity, tangents. Sorry, here it is. So this is all of them: spline, linear, clamped, stepped, flat, which is referring to all of these: spline, linear, flat, stepped, which is this one. So that one is stepped next. This one is, so you've got spline here and linear, clamped. That must be clamped. Yeah. Yeah. So they are basically what all of these are here. Buttons. You also got them here, just like you got polygons here. You got polygons here. Create polygons. You can also, I've taken it off here, the tab, but it's also here. And here you have edit. You can cut and copy keys, which I'll show you. View, or what you want to view. This is what you want to view in here. Curves, yeah. That's for like cycling and what have you. Constant, linear. That's more to do with cycling, for running and idles and runs and walks, which I'll go over as well. You don't need these two. You'll need to know because I will be breaking tangents, which I'll tell you about as well. So what I'll do is I'll do a quick. Might be clearer if I show you. I'll get create a cube. So let's get a cube here. Yeah? Press W. Get into translate mode, and I'll just put it on top here. Now what I'll do a simple animation. So let's start at 1. I'll select the character, press S on the keyboard, and you can see there's a keyframe there. What I'll do, I'll go to halfway here, and I'll just make it go like that. And then I'll make it go back. So to go back to the starting place, I'll just come to the first frame, middle click the mouse, drag it all the way to 120 and key. So it'll be exactly on the same. So go back there and back and then back. So that's what we've got. It's a very basic animation, yeah? In fact, let's make it quicker. You can double click if you notice these keys. So basically I pressed shift and the left mouse button and dragged it all the way. This way, when you press this here, you can move it, all the keys. Here you can scale, move everything. And here you can scale the timing down, which I'll go over in more detail. But what I do here is, because it's not on the frames, as you can see, it's 60 point whatever, you just go to snap and it snaps it to the nearest frame. Okay, that's a little thing that you'll be doing quite a lot of when you start animating. So anyway, let's have that 62. So if we look at this, it's moving up and down, right? Now, when we open the graph editor here, you can see the interpolation. So if we look here, we know that this is Z because it's created a key here. So we're just going to go over the graph editor here so you know what it's about. So if I select the translate, and if I press this, it's spline. See, it goes to spline. If I press this, and if I press this, so I'll select this key. If I select all of them, and I press this linear, it creates it like linear, yeah? So this is like the type of movement you would use for robots because it's quite linear. And if I go to if I click here and I go to flat, it creates this ease in and ease out. And you can also flat there, just to ease in and ease out, which we'll go over in much detail, these concepts, these principles of animation. And you may have heard of pose to pose animation. So say if I select all of this and I go to stepped, that is pose to pose. So that means when I go here and I play the animation, it's not going to do nothing until I get to the next key, which steps there, see? And then if I go to the next one, pops back. So this is what we call pose to pose. So what we do when we animate, we'll do one pose there, one pose every 4 frames, maybe there. So you're pose to posing everything. So if I change this to, say, flat now, watch the movement. It's very bouncy pinball, isn't it? Yeah. So so that's more robotic. So if I go to spline and say, if I change this to flat, it's going to be easing in and easing out. So it's a bit of a cushion. See? So it's a bit of ease in, ease out, ease in, ease out. So they're the different interpolations, the graph editor. And obviously you connect this to your character and your hips, which I will go over more detail. But this is just to go over the graph editor, what the graph editor does and what you will be using. So overall, most of what you will be using will be, for example, if you're doing a walk, the feet have to be like flat on the floor, so you'll be using this flat interpolation or linear quite a lot. And for the body, you'll be using spline, depending on what type of movement. Obviously, if it's human, it's organic, everything moves and flows and arcs, which will, I know I keep saying we'll go into more detail, but we will. When we start talking about the lectures in this course, I will go into more details with the arcs and paths of action and link it up. But don't get too complicated. It's very simple, the graph editor. It's just one thing at a time. Oh, another thing is you can pan the same way you pan in here using the Alt and the mouse buttons. You can do the same thing here. You can zoom in, middle button pans, right button, while holding Alt, the control down, Alt control. And you can just move it around. And if you press A, it frames it like it does. So you can press this key and it will just frame that area. If you press F, see? That's the other thing. And then these are like the different axes. So at the moment, we're just going in this axis. So what I could do is if I go to 30, I could move it up. And there you can see there's a key there, yeah? So now it'll play like this. And it'll go up and down. Same thing here as well. You can change linear, flat, whatever you like. So that's the basics of the graph editor. So you've got all these there. You've got the rotations as well. Anything that doesn't have any animation on it, it'll always be at value 0 here. So for example, if this is up, if you select this and press shift and move it up, see, it will only move up. When you have keys in the graph editor, try to keep them as you key them. Try not to move early on. Once you get used to animation, then you're familiar with it, then you can start doing that. But really, you want to keep everything in order here. So you want to move keys in here in the timeline. But when you get more experience, then you can come up here and start moving keys. But for the moment, you can just press shift and go up and down. So say if I go here and I say, oh, I want the end of this value to be the same as this. You just go here and then you just go to copy. You can either do Control-C, Control-C or edit copy, and then simply click this and paste in it, and then it levels it out. And you might find that sometimes there's a little curve like this, and then your foot will kind of float a lot in animations, which is very common. You get to spot that very quickly. So all you have to do is literally just select them both and flatten it, and it flattens them both. As long as these two values are the same, you'll completely flatten it out. So that, in a nutshell, that's all you need to know, really. I mean, if there was for example, say if we take this is like a cycle going up and down, and we want it, and if we go to, say we go to like 500 frames, it's not cycling all the way. So what you do is, you select this, and you can see it all here. You can see it's not cycling from here to here. So all you do is, when I was chatting about these, so these are like cycling. This is in cycling for infinity. So say if you're doing a walk and you want it to carry on walking forward, then you would do these, because it would carry on going all the way. So if you do these ones, these are like cycling it'll just normally cycle. So if you go up, down, see, it'll keep on cycling. That's all it is. And this is what we do when we're doing walk cycles, run cycles, idles in video games. I'll be going over that much detail, but that's basically what you use these for. And when you see a little hiccup, that's because, for example, sometimes so I'll do this to spline. If you notice how it's coming sharp in, sharp out, sometimes what you need to do is flatten these. Or sometimes you might have something like this. So it's not really matching. It's not really cycling. So what you do is you try and match it by flattening these. So it's going smooth. So that sometimes when you have glitches in cycles, that's why. But I don't want to get too much into that yet. But this is just the basic graph editor, how it works, the fundamentals. So as you can see, I did an animation, then all you really need to use is these interpolations here. And when I'm doing my workflow, I just shortcut these. I put them as OF for flat, OS for spline, and so forth. The other thing you can do is, as you see here, the curves go all the way up there. Now, to get better control, what I always do, what I like working is weighted tangents. So for example, if I select all these keys and I break the tangents, you can see it's broken. So each one is independent now, you see, here. But still, you're having that problem where it's going up. So what I do is I break these even more. So I come to here. So if I select all these keys, I will come to curves, weighted tangents. So if you select that, you have more control now, see? And I'll talk more about this in the bouncing ball tutorial. But you see, I always tend to use this. Because if you go up here, you've got a lot more control of, and you can do nice overshoots. So for example, here, if I come here, I can just overshoot. So the pose can go hit here and go slightly hold the pose, then it comes down. And I'll talk more about that later on as well. But this is a very good tool. So we'll be using this a lot, breaking the tangents. We'll be using these curves here, spline, let's go here. And we'll be using clamped, spine, linear, stepped for planning we'll be using. So these are the interpolations we'll be using, and also breaking tangents. So you can, if you press that, you join them again, so they both join. But if you select this, you can break them independent. So you just got more control with this key to this key. That's called the spacing. So you've got more control over your curves and what's happening in between animations. So that's basically the graph editor in a nutshell. It's not that complicated. It doesn't have to be that complicated. You're just checking out these curves and seeing if they're all working properly. We will go over more depth as we go, but it's very simple. Keep it simple. Keep your idea simple, animation simple. And it's the simplest things that are the hardest to do, but it is very simple. Once you get it, you will find it quite simple, and you'll have your own little workflow, and you'll be more efficient. But this is it for this video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll be coming back and forth with this graph editor, because this is going to be your best mate. It's always going to be there. when you need it for animation. You know, you can't do without it. So I'll see you in the next video. Okay.